The Gonzaga Bulldogs made one thing very clear during Tuesday's dominant win over Creighton. They are far, far better than the 19th best team in the country.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets. So download the FanDuel app today. Well, folks, Gonzaga is 3-0 after a dominant win over the Creighton Blue Jays. The 23rd ranked Creighton Blue Jays, mind you, 27-point victory. And somehow that doesn't even quite encapsulate how much of an absolute destruction this was by the Zags, particularly in the second half. We're going to get into all of it. We're going to talk about Gonzaga's defense, that 19-0 run in the middle of the second half. Graham Ike hitting us with the Michael Jordan shrug after scoring his 2,000th career point. We're going to get into all that. Plus, we're going to talk about our keys to this game, what went well for Gonzaga, some things that actually they didn't do all that great in this game, but it didn't end up mattering in the final score. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to close out the show with a little bit of a wraparound around the WCC, some teams that are outperforming their expectations, some teams that have been a little disappointing, and some key players to keep an eye on in Gonzaga's final season as members of the West Coast Conference. But let's start with this game against Greg McDermott and the Creighton Blue Jays. Tuesday night, ESPN, Sean Farnham, Dave Fleming in the house, and boy, were they treated to a doozy of a game. Gonzaga is now 4-0 all-time against the Creighton Blue Jays in the Mark Few era. I have to imagine, and I tried to do this research, but I will admit that unless I was the Creighton SID, this would have been a difficult task. But I don't know how many teams have played Creighton in the Coach McDermott era and have played them 4 or more times where Creighton hasn't beaten them at least once. Creighton's beaten everybody in the Big East, so there are not that many teams that have played Creighton that many times and beaten them every time, but Gonzaga is one of the few teams that Creighton just cannot seem to get past. And in this game, I mean, it was a good first half. Greg McDermott in the post-game press conference had a fantastic quote. It was his opening statement. I'll paraphrase it here, but he basically said, it was a good first half of basketball. I thought we played competitive. I thought we, did a good job of hitting our shots and et cetera, et cetera. And then he paused and just kind of looked pensively out into the audience. And he said, and that second half was a nightmare. And it sure was. If you were a Creighton fan, what Gonzaga was able to do in that second half. We'll talk about some of the good things here. First of all, Gonzaga has moved all the way up to number 2 in the country at KenPom behind the Duke Blue Devils. Past teams like Kentucky, past teams like Illinois, Texas Tech, a few other great teams as well. The number 2 team in the country at KenPom, the number 4 team in the country at Evan Miyakawa, the number 9 team at Bart Torvik. AP voters still only had them 19th. It was not enough of a move. I wasn't surprised that the AP voters didn't move Gonzaga up very much after their win over Oklahoma. It doesn't mean they were right. I just was not surprised. And I unfortunately think that right now, you, I, me, many people listening to the show probably believe Gonzaga belongs in the top 10, at very minimum the top 15. They will probably get into the top 15 depending how the rest of this week goes for teams in front of them. But it would be surprising to see AP voters move Gonzaga up 9 spots for a win over a team that was lower than them in the top 25, even though that is incorrect. If Gonzaga is anywhere lower than 12th in the AP voting, it's just ridiculous. Even 12th is too low based on how this team is playing, but we know the AP voters aren't staying up past their bedtimes to watch Gonzaga, so we know that they probably didn't see this game, saw the final score, and thought, oh, wow, Gonzaga picked up a nice W, but that doesn't encapsulate the dominance of this game. Let's start with Graham Ike. 20 points, 10 rebounds, a block for Graham Ike. He was insanely, overwhelmingly efficient in this basketball game, 8 of 10 from the field, including 4 of 4 from 3. It's the most made threes that Graham Ike has had in a game in his career. He made the first 3 of those 3-pointers in the first 4 minutes of this basketball game. I believe he had all of them before the first media timeout in this contest even happened. And for reference, in Graham Ike's 2 seasons at Wyoming, 45 games, like 1,400 career minutes played, Graham Ike made 3 3-pointers. And in this game, he made 3 3-pointers in the first 4 minutes of the basketball game. I referenced it earlier on that third three. He turned, he hit the crowd with the Michael Jordan shrug, which is always fun when you are just on fire from deep. And it came out afterwards that was his 1,998th, 1,999th, and 2,000th career point for his prolific college basketball career. Obviously, a large chunk of those points coming from his time with the Wyoming Cowboys. But per my research, I could not find any other player in the Mark Few era aside from Drew Timme who has scored 2,000 career points. Nobody else has done it in a Gonzaga uniform except for Drew Timme, Jim McPhee, and Frank Burgess. Burgess played in the 50s and early 60s. McPhee played in the 80s and early 90s. So Drew Timme is the only Gonzaga player in Mark Few's era to score 2,000 points in a Gonzaga uniform. But even if you look up guys like Kyle Wiltshire and guys like Caleb Battle and guys like Malachi Smith and other great transfers, none of them hit 2,000 career points. Graham Ike might be alone with Drew Timme in being a 2,000-point scorer to have played for Mark Few. It is a incredible, tremendous accomplishment, and I think it deserves some extra love here because that is a ridiculous number. And obviously, yes, there are players who are more prolific scorers at Gonzaga who didn't last as long. Domantas Sabonis maybe could have gotten there, et cetera, but it does not take away from how fantastic Graham Ike has been throughout his Gonzaga career. And in particular in this game, he knew coming into the game that Creighton was probably going to give him open looks from 3. They scouted it. They expected that to be the case. And again, for the record, I'm not saying, Greg McDermott was stupid for that. I kind of think that's a justified strategy. Make Graham Ike beat you with, if you're going to let Graham Ike beat you, don't let him beat you by just scoring around the rim, which he did quite easily in this game as well. But make him beat you from the outside, and then he hits 3 threes in the first few minutes. You're like, well, crap, I guess we got to switch our strategy up and see if we can try to stop him some other way. Spoiler alert, they did not. They were not able to do so. And halftime, 45-38 game. Gonzaga led almost the entire game. I believe Creighton had a lead for 30 seconds in this basketball game, but it was tied for about 4 minutes in the first half, and it was never – Gonzaga barely had a double-digit lead in the first half of this game. And then the second half, they just came out absolutely firing. They went on a 19-0 run in the second half to boost the lead all the way up into the high 20s. I think they got over 30 at one point. I think 32 was the highest this lead was. And it was because of relentless defense, relentless ball pressure, throwing Jalen Warley up at the guards, throwing Emmanuel Nicente at the guards. They had a 19-0 run, like we said. Creighton had 18 turnovers in this basketball game, and Gonzaga had 27 points off turnovers. Creighton, for the record, 5 points off turnovers. That's a 22-point swing in what ended up being a 27-point game. That's your difference right there. That's your difference. Gonzaga got a bunch of turnovers, got out in transition, scored off of those turnovers, and then went back on defense and did it again and again and again and again until suddenly this went from an 8-9 point game to a 30-point game. And it was like in a blink of an eye. It was I'm on my computer at the game, taking some notes, getting ready. And I look up and it's like, oh, it's an 11-point game. Oh, it's a 22-point game. Oh, it's a 31-point game. It happened that fast. If you took an extended, break to go get some water, to go get a refill, you might have missed a lot of this happening. That is how crazy fast it happened and how scary, truly scary this Gonzaga team is with their ability to do that. Gonzaga's point guard play was excellent in this game. Mario Saint-Superi comes off the bench, 13 points on 5 of 6 shooting, 4 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals. He also knocked down both of his 3-point attempts. But Braden Smith was great as well. Stats aren't quite as explosive as Mario's, 6 points, but he had 5 assists and 0 turnovers. That's outstanding. He also had a pair of steals. I really liked the way that Braden led this team. He had a couple of mid-range jumpers off of ball screens that really, Coach McDermott again mentioned this after the game, how his ability to come off those screens, read the situation, realize he's got an open look from the mid-range and knock it down. I mean, that's really tough to defend. And I thought Braden Huff, speaking after the game as well, said some really nice things about the point guards. And I think kind of encapsulated the way that this rotation is working for Gonzaga right now. He said, Smith, he said, Braden's our starter and he's a leader. He's a veteran guy. He sets our tempo, he sets our pace, and he kind of gets us into our rhythm. And then Mario comes in, and Mario is a different look. He's frenetic, he's enthusiastic, he's exciting, he's got a lot of energy. And I think the kind of yin and yang of those two guys is really impactful for this team. We've obviously seen that happen. And so for people who say, oh, should Mario start? Should this happen? Like, I think the way that the rotation is working, at least for now, is really is working in Gonzaga's favor. I don't think it needs to change all that dramatically. And I think we will see these guys kind of continue to split time for the most part going forward. Also have to mention Jalen Warley, 9 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. A incredible performance from him. Got multiple offensive rebounds, went 3 of 4 from the free throw line, got 9 rebounds again coming off the bench. 3 steals. Again, they were putting him on Nick Graves, which is Creighton's best guard. His ability to be a power forward, to be the best rebounder and on the floor, while also being the best on-ball defender, that is a incredibly unique combination. And Warley's ability to spell the bigs, to take defensive pressure off of the bigs when he's on the floor, to be a playmaker offensively. I mean, he's one of the most unique players we have seen at Gonzaga in a long time. And again, Coach McDermott, extremely complimentary to Warley after the game, said, I recruited him out of high school. I recruited him when he hit the transfer portal. I think he's somebody who impacts winning at a really, really high level. They had a nice moment after the game talking to each other. You can tell a lot of kind of reverence there. And Warley was a player that if a group of teams that are pursuing a player in the transfer portal are all coached by really good coaches, that's a pretty good sign of how valuable they perceive that player to be. And Warley was always pursued by teams like that, and for pretty obviously good reason. The bad stuff in this game, it's not a lot to really talk about here. The free throw shooting would be one. Gonzaga was 7 of 13 from the free throw line. Creighton also was 20 of 31. By the way, I saw a lot of Creighton fans on social media complaining about the officiating as if it was pro Gonzaga. At the specific time that I saw a lot of these posts, Creighton had taken 3 times as many free throws as Gonzaga. So hard to use that argument to a lot of validity. But also, Gonzaga has not shot well from the free throw line. You may recall my bold prediction that Gonzaga was going to be one of the lead the country in free throw shooting. They're not going to do that. And the issue is that the players that keep getting to the free throw line for Gonzaga they're not very good free throw shooters. It's not a big deal. 7 of 13 really doesn't kill you in a game like this, but certainly the free throw shooting is going to need to improve as the season continues to go on. Gonzaga also was not great from the three-point line. We will talk more about that in the second segment, as that was one of our keys to victory. It certainly didn't play out in a way that ultimately impacted Gonzaga, and obviously Graham making all 4 of his three-point attempts was incredibly valuable for the Zags. But the players on this team that are here primarily to shoot threes didn't do it all that well. Some of them haven't done it well all season long. And again, that's something that hasn't hurt them yet, but will absolutely hurt them at times this year. And they're going to need to find a way to iron that out. Well, folks, Gonzaga's ball pressure helped set the tempo in this game. And while Tyon did not quite cook the way he has been cooking, he was still very impactful. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. And if you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on a job where every detail matters. And their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode is also brought to you by Doer, folks. I've always had real issues finding jeans that are actually comfortable enough for me to wear, which is why I'm so excited to receive my new pair from Doer. This local company has the most comfortable jeans, no matter what style you like and for any occasion, whether it's just a quick trip to the grocery store, a night out with your friends, or heading out to the kennel to go check out a game. Doer jeans have 5 times the stretch of original denim, and they're antibacterial, meaning your jeans stay fresh longer, so you can wear them more and wash less. Dewar is also made with Cool Max that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture to keep you cool and comfortable as the temperatures change. Dewar are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. In fact, they invented the original performance denim. Simply put, Dewar makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. So get a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go now to shopdewar.com/lockedonseattle and you'll get 15% off your first order. That's shopdewar, DUER.com/lockedonseattle for 15% off. Dewar.com/lockedonseattle. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags, still the #1 sports podcast network, and still your team every day. We talked about Gonzaga's win over the Creighton Blue Jays in the first segment. Dominant performance from Graham Ike and an electric game from Gonzaga's defense on that 19-0 run, in particular in the second half. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look back at the 5 keys to this game that I laid out on Tuesday's show. What are the things that we think are going to most impact Gonzaga's chances of winning this basketball game? And we're talking about how those things actually played out on Tuesday night at the McCarthy Athletic Center. Number 1 was second chance points. Creighton gave up 21 offensive rebounds to South Dakota in their first game of the year. Meanwhile, Gonzaga gobbled up 18 offensive rebounds against Oklahoma. So we figured that's going to be a huge part of this game. The end result was a really minor advantage for Gonzaga. 11 offensive rebounds compared to 9 for Creighton. Now that stat is a little bit misleading. Creighton got at least 4 of those offensive rebounds in the final 3 minutes when this game was well out of hand, when Ismaila Diani and Davis Fogel were on the floor. Heck, Noah Holland was on the floor for a couple of minutes. So the actual impact of offensive rebounding was a bit more significant during the competitive part of this game than it was in the aggregate when you look at the final results for this game. Gonzaga also didn't actually capitalize on their offensive rebounds as well as they could have. They only had 9 second chance points in this game. There were some really nice moments. About 14 minutes left in the game, Braden Huff ripped away an offensive rebound and scored on the other side of the basket. That was a really nice play for him and something we want to see more of from B. Huff, as his physicality and his ability to kind of outmuscle people for rebounds hasn't really been a strong part of his game. And so seeing that in this game was a positive sign. We also had a great possession where Ty and Grant Foster got an offensive rebound, got fouled, and made it to the free throw line. We also saw Jalen Warley tip out an offensive rebound to Mario St. Superi, who drilled a 3. And then I think it was like a possession or 2 later, Graham Ike got an offensive rebound, also kicked it out to Mario, faked the 3, drove to the lane, got an easy lay-in at the cup. So it definitely was an impact. And some of that offensive rebounding happened during Gonzaga's huge runs in the second half, but it didn't ultimately impact the game as much as we had maybe perceived that it would. Number 2 for our keys to this game was to set the tempo. Creighton is a team that likes to play slower than Gonzaga. That I think they were like 215th or so in tempo coming into this game. And that's historically been accurate for Greg McDermott's team, whereas Gonzaga, of course, is typically a top 50, sometimes even higher than that in terms of tempo. And I thought Gonzaga did a good job of this. I think Creighton got sped up. And I think you saw that. I mean, it was the first 5 minutes of this game was a frenetic pace. And then it really slowed down after that. I think both teams were like, okay, let's cool it here a little bit. But ultimately, there weren't a ton of fast break points in this game. But in the second half, Gonzaga's ball pressure, Gonzaga's ability to get steals and get out in transition really changed the game in a lot of ways. So it may not have been tempo as much as it was our third key, which is ball pressure. I mean, we've talked about this extensively already. This was probably the single most important factor in this game. Gonzaga's ability to put Jalen Warley on the opposing team's ball handler is a massive mismatch. It is unbelievable how much that changes the game for Mark Few's team. And again, Graham Ike and Braden Huff, after the game in the post-game press conference, I asked them about Jalen Warley and the impact that he makes on this team. And Graham said, like, he makes our job easier on defense. When he's in the game with one of us, we know like that he's going to be out there, that he's going to be able to switch on the ball screens, that he's going to keep guys in front of him. He's going to take pressure off of me to protect the rim because of what he does. And that is so valuable. And to be able to do that, and then to also be able to impact the game offensively as a driver, as a facilitator, is just such a unique combination of skills. But it wasn't just Warley. Mario had 3 steals in this game. Braden Smith had 2 steals in this game. Ty and Grant Foster's ball pressure was great. Emmanuel Inochente's ball pressure was great, as it always is. Gonzaga had a 27-5 advantage in points off turnovers. Again, we said that in the onset. That's a huge Huge deal for Gonzaga. And a lot of the kind of takeaways for Creighton in this game were like, oh, it's still a new team. They're still finding themselves. And I'm not disagreeing with any of that. Creighton's going to be better as the year goes on. But it always kind of rankles me a little bit when there's this argument of like, oh, well, because they used it with Oklahoma too. New teams still finding themselves. Do people think that this Gonzaga team has played together a lot? Because they haven't. 3 players who are in Gonzaga's rotation were on this team last year. Graham Ike, Braden Huff, and Emmanuel Nicente. That is it. And yes, Gonzaga is one of the oldest and most experienced teams in college basketball. But Creighton's newcomers, Owen Freeman's a senior or a junior, I think. Nick Graves is a senior. Josh Dix is a senior. Like, they have a bunch of new players as well. So eventually that narrative is going to have to shift a little bit, where it's like, hey, Gonzaga might just be bullying the crap out of teams because they're really good, and not because those teams are still finding themselves, because Gonzaga, they don't struggle. As Stephen Carr said this after the game too, that this is Gonzaga's ability to play really well at the start of seasons when they have newcomers is excellent, to the point where it doesn't even get mentioned of like, oh yeah, Gonzaga's just humming along like they always do. It's like, this is a roster full of guys who haven't really played together, especially when you factor in Mario and Tyon not getting much time with the team this year. It's scary how good they are already at this point in the season. Key number 4 was to find that outside shot. And yeah, that just did not happen. It just did not happen. It happened for 2 guys. One of them was Graham Ike. Again, we mentioned that already, 4 for 4 from 3. But Gonzaga was 9 of 27. 33%. That's not horrible, but it's also not good. It's not good. Gonzaga's worst ever three-point shooting season in the Mark Few era was last year. They were 35%. So 33 is below that. They came into this game at 29. So the fact that a 33% performance from 3 increased the team's three-point shooting percentage is not a good sign for Gonzaga right now. Again, I mentioned Graham Ike was 4 of 4. Mario was 2 of 2. That means the rest of the team was an abysmal 3 of 21. Steele Ventures was 1 of 5. I think Tyon was 1 of 6. Adam Miller was 0 of 3. Tyon's not really here to shoot threes, but Steele Ventures and Adam Miller are. And for them to combine to go 1 of 8, it's not great. It's not great. Steele Ventures has not found his shot yet this season. I don't think that Steele Ventures has played poorly. I'm watching the games. He's active defensively. He's working hard on both ends of the floor. He had a really great play coming off of a ball screen and making a bounce pass to Mario that, looked like the kind of play that Ryan Nembhard would make. And for Steele, who's not known as a passer, to be able to make that kind of read and play is a very promising sign. He's taking good shots. They're just not falling yet. They will. If he was taking bad shots, or if he was disjointed, something like that, maybe we'd have a little bit more concern. But Steele's 9th in the rotation right now. It's pretty clear he is playing less than everybody else who's a part of the rotation at this point. So your 9th guy, who's a pure three-point shooter, who's coming off of 2 straight missed seasons with injuries, being a little rusty to start the season, hardly a serious concern, but also something that it's like, yeah, that he needs to find that, and he will again, but it was not a strong part of Gonzaga's game. Adam Miller went 0 of 3. He actually had a really good game. He just didn't make his threes, and he alluded to that after the game of like, yeah, that's not like me to be missing those 3-point shots, but I took the shots within the rhythm of the offense, and they just weren't falling. Again, not an overly concerning thing, but 3 games in, and Gonzaga has not been a good 3-point shooting team yet. Key number 5, which was a big key in the Oklahoma game as well, let Tyon cook. We've seen Tyon Grant Foster play great in the first 2 games of the season, even though we know that he's still adjusting to the offense and kind of learning his role and where he fits in, because he spent so little time with the team this offseason. And I think we were kind of due for a bit of an off night. Like it was always inevitable that he was going to have a bit of a clunker. And what I wanted to see out of that inevitable clunker was, does he still find ways to impact the game? We don't know a ton about him yet. We see him be this super emotional guy. He's really high energy. He loves pumping up the crowd. Sometimes players who are like that, it can be an adverse thing if they are not having a good game. Did not see that from Tyon. 5 points, 4 rebounds, 1 of 7 from the field, including 1 of 6 from 3. He was only 2 of 4 from the free throw line. He picked up a pair of fouls. Just statistically not a great game. But I thought he impacted the game positively in a lot of ways. He still was relentless in attacking the rim when he could. He got to the free throw line a couple of times, which is a valuable part of his game. He played good, tough, physical defense. He's very active on that end of the floor. Again, this is something that I don't think he got enough credit for coming into the season, how good of a defensive player he is. And now he's not getting very much credit for it because Warley and Nicente are better defenders than he is, but he is active and engaged and good on that end of the floor. I don't love that he took 6 threes in this game. I suspect that's something like there were a few that weren't maybe not the perfect shot choice. Again, not faulting him for maybe not taking the perfect shot when he has not really gotten a lot of chance to learn this offense. But I think we were kind of, again, due for a game where maybe it started to actually look like, oh, this is maybe a player who hasn't spent a lot of time in this system. He didn't look like that in the first two games, and I think that was a bit of an anomaly. Having said that, the fact that he could still find ways to positively impact this game, the fact that Mark Few still ran him out there for 20 minutes when he wasn't playing his best and wasn't knocking down his shots, very good sign of things to come for this team. Well, folks, switching gears here, Santa Clara picked up a massive win at Xavier. St. Mary's is 3-0 with dominant 20-plus point wins. The Portland Pilots might be the surprise team in the WCC. We got all that and more to close out the show coming up in just a second. But first, folks, college basketball and the NBA are back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you miss the start of a game, or if you just want to ride out the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to those fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay to get a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Gonzaga right now, they were at minus 180 to win the WCC. Hopefully you got your bets in then, folks, because they've already dropped to minus 320, even with St. Mary's 3-0, even with Santa Clara's major victory. Gonzaga's dominance to begin the season has them now as heavy favorites to win the WCC one final time before moving over to the Pac-12. Right now, folks, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are now moving away from talking about, loving on, having a whole lot of fun talking about Gonzaga's major win over the Creighton Blue Jays at the McCarthy Athletic Center on Tuesday night, to instead give a little update on how the WCC is shaking out so far here about, as you're listening to this, 9 days into the college basketball season. Still 6 undefeated teams in the West Coast Conference. Obviously, Gonzaga among them. St. Mary's is 3-0. LMU, shout out to the Lions, 4-0 so far on the year. Santa Clara, Oregon State, and Portland have all avoided a loss so far up to this point. And in fact, there's actually only one team in the West Coast Conference with a losing record. Everybody else is even. Most of them are 1-1 at this point. But the Washington State Cougars, really rough start to the season for them. They are 1-2. They beat St. Thomas, but they lost to Davidson early in the season. They also lost to Idaho. It's been a rough start for David Riley and the Cougars. Everybody else is at least 500 or better so far in the season. Some highlight games. We mentioned this one at the top. Santa Clara really made a statement going on the road to a Big East team in Xavier, blasted them. The final score is 87-68. A 21-point true road victory over a Power 5 conference team is incredible no matter how you slice it. But here's the deal. Santa Clara, with about 6 minutes to go, was up by 30. This could have been a 30-point win. They let off the gas a little bit. Xavier found a way to get back into it. But first of all, the Richard Pitino era for the Musketeers, really rough start. Comes over from New Mexico where he was outstanding. And again, Santa Clara is a good team, but to get dog walked in your own home arena by a team by anybody. If UConn comes into Xavier and beats them by 21 points, yeah, like that sucks. But at least they're all right. But like Santa Clara is not an NCAA tournament team. They might be this year. We'll see. I don't want to discredit them. But that's not a team that you can let come into your house and beat you that badly. But a huge shout out to Herb Sendek and the Broncos. They've done it so far without Thierry Darlan, their late offseason acquisition from the G League. He played fine. Like, he's not been bad. He's a very good rebounder and he's a good shot blocker, but he hasn't found his rhythm yet. So this Santa Clara team has the potential to get better than they already are at this point, and they're playing some darn good basketball right now. There's every year where it might be Santa Clara. And I'm not saying Santa Clara is going to beat Gonzaga. I'm not saying they're going to beat St. Mary's. But if there's every year where Santa Clara is going to finish third, or at least potentially put this league in the 3-bid league conversation, maybe this is the year, because they've looked very good so far. St. Mary's has also looked great. 3-0. Every win by 20-plus points. That included a 30-point win over Ohio, who's 164th at KenPom. That's not great. I'm not going to pretend that like 164th is super good. That's like typically around where like LMU or Oregon State or teams like that end up. They're a little higher than that actually. So it's a mediocre team, but 30-point wins are 30-point wins. And for St. Mary's, they've 21-point win in their second game, 28-point win in their first game. Like they have absolutely dominated. Mikey Lewis has been fantastic. The Gales are going to be tough. The Gales are tough every single year. There's no reason to not think they're going to be tough again this year. LMU, we mentioned them 4-0 so far on the year. What a nice road game on Tuesday over UTEP, going on the road to Texas El Paso. Any true road W is good. Any true road W early in the season, those are tough to pick up. So big shout out to LMU, beating UTEP, who was 190th at KenPom, 71-58 the final score. Stan Johnson's his seat's been getting a little warmer down there, but a strong start to the season might keep him there a little bit longer. Speaking of a little bit warmer seats for teams that are off to a good start, the Portland Pilots, 3-0 on the year so far under Coach Shante Leggins. That included a home win over UC Davis on, I think, Monday or Tuesday, 67-63, the final score there. They also beat Arkansas Pine Bluff, who is admittedly not a good team, and the final score made it look kind of close, but Portland pretty well handled that basketball game. Haven't played anybody that should really challenge them yet for the Pilots, but still, the Portland has lost to bad teams in the past pretty regularly. So for them to be 3-0 to start the year is a promising sign for them going forward. San Francisco, unfortunately, had a chance to win a major game on the road, taking on Penny Hardaway and the Memphis Tigers. Could not quite get it done. Lost 76-70 in that one. I respect the heck out of Chris Gerlofson and the Dons for scheduling tough non-conference games. They just never quite able to put together enough wins in that non-conference. This is one they really needed. They got Mississippi State later. If they can go pick that one up, that's going to really help. But this is a game they could have really used, and it was unfortunate they weren't quite able to get it done. Some high performers so far in the WCC. Seattle U's got the two leading scorers in the conference, Braden Maldonado and Will Heimroth, both averaging Maldonado's 22.5 points per game. Heimroth's at 22 points per game. So some really, really good high-level scores for the Redhawks in their first season in the WCC. Mikey Lewis has been great for St. Mary's. I think he had two 30-point games, or at least one 30-point game, averaging just under 22 points per game. Was a pretty obvious and trendy breakout pick coming into the year, knowing that St. Mary's lost 4 starters and that he was going to step into a bigger role, similar to Braden Huff. Obviously different players, different positions, but again, team that lost 4 starters has an obvious bench candidate stepping into a bigger role. Lewis has really been good so far for the Gales, and he's going to be a problem for Gonzaga when those matchups happen later in the season. Eli Ralph from Pacific was a great player last year, was all preseason all WCC pick. So far been as good as advertised, averaging over 20 points per game. And then got to give a shout out to Joel Foxwell. Joel Foxwell, a freshman guard for Portland from Australia. We talk a lot about the pipeline that Randy Bennett has from Australia to St. Mary's to Moraga, but Shante Leggins has a very good Australian pipeline as well. Tyler Robertson was one of the best players in the league for many years playing for Shante. They've had some other great Australians. Austin Rapp was a great freshman for them last year, transferred to Wisconsin. And now they have Joel Foxwell, who was not supposed to start this season. Riley Parker, a transfer addition for them, is expected to be the starter, but he is hurt right now, going to be out for a couple more weeks. So Joel Foxwell steps into his starting lineup, averaging just under 18 points per game. He's a great passer, great scorer. This might be a nice little diamond in the rough find for Shante Leggins. He is very good at international scouting, not something he gets a ton of credit for, but should. And it looks like Foxwell is going to be another great player for the Pilots. Also got to shout out a couple other players. Mookie Cook, transferring from Oregon to San Francisco, former target of the Gonzaga Bulldogs out of high school, averaging 15 points, 8 boards, 3 steals, and 1.5 blocks in his 2 games with the Dons of San Francisco. Nice get for them. And then Josiah Lake is a player who stepped into a much bigger role for Wayne Tinkle in the Oregon State Beavers. 16 points, 8 rebounds through 3 games for the Beavs. Got to give him a shout out, not only because he's playing well and he deserves that shout out, but he's from my high school, Tualatin High School. Shout out Josiah Lake and Tualatin High School here to close out the show. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, a special shout out to those everyday listeners as well. We'll be back. You've got one more show for you on Thursday, then Friday. We're getting you ready for their road tilt, going to Tempe to take on Bobby Hurley and the Arizona State Sun Devils. Late one Friday night. We'll get you ready for all of that and more coming up later this week. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.